Good evening and welcome back to the One Celtic Fans View this evening. Well, what a 24 hours it's been. Not only do we have a new management team in place tomorrow night, we play a game at Celtic Park. And will it be a brand new system that we're watching at Celtic Park? Will it be the famous 3-5-2 last used by Martin O'Neill? Who else? It'll be interesting to see the formation that we go with tomorrow, because obviously Martin will have to rely on Sean Maloney. He will have spoken to Sean Maloney about the team formation. Can the team change formation? And what would the team formation ultimately be? I'm not even going to try and predict it, to be honest. I think that trying to predict what Sean Maloney and Martin O'Neill will do in their first game is crazy. There's more chance of us trying to predict the new manager. It will be the new manager of Celtic. I think there's more chance of us trying to predict that correctly. I have got a poll running tonight. It's got 84 votes running already. Quite good early on. And it is, who would you like as the next Celtic manager? Kieran McKenna's gone 31%. Coulson of Brøndby is 52, Robbie Keane's 9, and the former Borussia Dortmund coach, I believe, is sitting on 7%. I've got a funny feeling that Celtic are going to go all in on the McKenna one, but we'll let that run along nicely, that poll, whilst we talk about potential formations. Should we talk about formations tomorrow night? I mean, Celtic are in an awkward situation under Martin O'Neill, where Martin does say that we have numerous players who are out injured. And does Martin O'Neill go with a similar formation? I think he'll go more defensive in midfield, will he? I think the big shout is who will play as number in goals. I'm not going to say number one, because Kasper Schmeichel is obviously the number one goalkeeper at Celtic. But when it comes to it, there's a number of players that have taken to social media, and one of them is Jamal Simpson-Posey. He's taken to social media over the last 12 hours or so, and there's a picture of him kicking a ball. Will he get some game time now that Brendan Rodgers is gone? The good news is that Alistair Johnson will be out for a matter of weeks. Will he still be here when Martin O'Neill is manager? I think that if I was going to go with anybody tomorrow evening, I'd go with if you're thinking, can Brendan Rodgers change it? I would go with the back three of Liam Scales, Trusty, and I would say Kieran Tierney. I was thinking Scarachi, but would you play Scarachi a little bit further forward? I mean, Kieran's been having some good games, but it's a difficult one. With Tony Ralston there, young Donovan, I think that they take a pounding. Dane Murray, they all took a pounding from the media. We'll use Tony Ralston as part of the back three. We'll use Kieran Tierney. I think he'll go with Kieran Tierney all day long. I think Sean Maloney would also. And then when it comes to the midfield, that's where it gets interesting, because as good as Luke McCown is, Callum McGregor will start in the midfield. Now, if he's going to go for a 5 in the midfield, he could go with Callum McGregor, Luke McCown, Paulo Bernardo, Arnie Ingles, and Benji. But then that wouldn't give him much as backup. So what about if you bring Marcelo Scarachi into the midfield, playing just further forward than Kieran Tierney? And then the two up front were kind of limited with the players that we can play up front. I mean, does he go with Balwisha, who just doesn't look good enough right now? Maybe that may change when you look at Tenekte. I would use Tenekte. Would you use Tenekte as an out and out winger, or would you use him as a second striker? Has Shin Yamada proved enough that he can make it as a Celtic striker? There's probably going to be a lot of players who are going to come out and shine under the manager, Martin O'Neill, because I think there are some players who believe that a lot of players will believe that they were ill-treated by the manager, Brendan Rodgers, and not getting enough game time. It's always interesting when managers do leave. Now, I was watching a video that a Leicester fan site put up this afternoon, and it was the final interview with Brendan Rodgers at Leicester before he was sacked. And you could have took it word for word, and it could have been his last interview for Celtic. The tone of the voice, the talking about need for better players, talking about previous transfer windows. I'm sitting watching that and I'm thinking, are you having a laugh, Brendan? It's just, it's wow. I couldn't believe what I was watching. And the similarities between the last press conference that he had at Celtic and the last press conference he had at Leicester, you're thinking, do you know, maybe he does work his ticket towards the end. Maybe he knows the end is coming. He does know. He has said himself that, look, every manager at a club has a kind of lifetime value. There is a time that, you know, that either the manager has to change or the players has to change. Brendan Rodgers' own words. And Brendan Rodgers maybe thought that the board might make the change in the summer, and it didn't happen. I think when Brendan Rodgers looks back to the meeting that he had with Dermot Desmond in the summer, he was maybe thinking that he was going to get a payoff, and rather than getting an extended contract. Now, will Dyson Maeda be back fit enough for the game tomorrow night to add a little spice? Will his back injury have disappeared? I think it may have. I think that you may be surprised on how fit Dyson Maeda is. We can speculate all we want, but when it comes to it, I think that we'll just wait till tomorrow night and see what players that Sean Maloney and Martin O'Neill go for a 4-2-3-1. Place Sinisalo, Donovan, Trusty, Scales, Marcelo, Paulo, Luke, Balwisha, Tenekes, Maeda, Shin. That's your lineup. Has Shin Yamada done enough to prove that he's a goal scorer? That's the big question. I don't think that we don't really have an out-and-out proven goal scorer at Celtic at the minute, and that's the big worry for any manager that comes in, not just Martin O'Neill. I mean, he's coming into a Celtic side, and Martin O'Neill said it himself today. Martin O'Neill said, look, there's no men in this squad. He had a team of men. He said this is basically a team of young boys. You know, Kelechi, I don't think that it's one of Brendan's pals. I don't think that he'll definitely not get a new contract at the end of this season. That's for sure. A bit like Kasper Schmeichel was offered the year extension. I don't think Kasper will be offered. Well, he's not. He's going to be away at the end of this season, which will see young Sinisalo rise to the number one spot under the new manager. But then again, maybe a new manager might go, do you know what, I'm going to change it up. But if we were to go for a more youthful manager at Celtic, as has been suggested highly by the media, it could be the case that Kieran McKenna is the number one choice. We could. The reason I'm not too keen on the whole Coutson thing is we've been after certain players, the Bobo Glint manager, we've been after certain players for a certain amount of time. And the Mikel Ange one, Celtic have been linked with him for a couple of seasons, and he's not the real deal, is he? I just fear that if we go for the Bobo Glint manager after being linked with him so many times in the past, I think that it could be a case of that was a mistake. It's a Ronnie Dyler type thing. But then again, with the McKenna one, you don't know what you're getting with him either. I mean, his CV speaks for it himself. I mean, the Wilfred Nancy one, I mean, that's way left of field. He's crept up over the odds. Strangely enough, he's at 4-1. The Frenchman is currently the head coach of a Major League Soccer club, Columbus Crew. He's achieved success in the US, winning the MLS Cup in 2023 and 2024 in League Cups. Also earning runner-up spot in the championships, CONCACAF Championship. I think whoever gets the next Celtic manager, whoever gets the job, Celtic will be looking for someone that can take us for longer than a 3-year period. But then that then comes its own issues. We've had managers that have came in and been successful and moved on because of their success. I mean, you can see Brendan Rodgers came in, was successful, moved on. Bodo are in the Champions League, no chance he'll leave now. You never know. Don't say it'll be Steve Clarke. O'Neill will be camping in the big tent outside the ground. He'll be staying in a top hotel. Celtic will make sure that he's staying in one of the top hotels in town, that's for sure. It was interesting. It looked like he just arrived off a plane or whatever when he got out the taxi this afternoon. Wouldn't be surprised if we end up with Steve Clarke, God help us, if that's the case. Chris says that the Bodo Glint manager looks the real deal. Young and gets the best out of players. That's fine, but I'm not too sure. I'm sure that Celtic, the people at Celtic will make the right choice, as long as we don't spend the next 3 or 4 months chasing a manager. Well, Martin O'Neill seems to think that it won't be like that. I think that Desmond has taken over the reins for this one again. The last time this happened, obviously, well, the very first time it happened was when Martin O'Neill was introduced as Celtic manager over 20 odd years ago. The next time it happened is when he introduced Brendan Rodgers as Celtic manager after the misfiring Ronnie Dyler. And it looks like that he will take charge of the whole management situation again, having picked up the phone so quickly to Martin O'Neill. And you've got to say, it is a bit left field. I mean, a lot of us were talking about the chances of Scott Brown coming in as temporary manager, the chances, but they're in jobs, and even people talking about, you know, Neil Lennon coming in and potentially, but Neil Lennon's in a job and he's got a nice wee tidy thing slagging off Celtic on Sky. The board will go for a cheap option, the yes man. But as the state we are in, what top manager will want to come in? That is something that I said about a week or so ago, and I was kind of slated for it. I said, well, do you know, if we do sack Brendan Rodgers just now, who would want to come in when Celtic are in such a position, not only off the pitch? Well, we've had our updates about AJ and CCV and Maida, now about Kelechi's injury. Very suspicious, if you ask me. I thought Kells was only going to be out for a couple of weeks. I thought him and Alistair Johnston were going to be out for weeks rather than months, is what we heard. Would you take a punt on Craig Bellamy? Definitely not. 2-year plus rolling for the next manager. I don't think it'll be a rolling contract for the next manager. No, I think that the year's rolling contract thing that we used to have before at Celtic is hopefully a thing of the past, and that we really need to let the club just deal with it, deal with whoever they're going to bring in as next manager. I don't think it's important to get a top manager. I think it's important to get the right manager, the manager that can make players better. Do you know, a manager like what Martin O'Neill was, that believes that, you know, you have to have a balance between experienced players, and I think that this is where Celtic have gone wrong at the moment. We've went down the road of having quite a young team at Celtic, and I don't think that it's working. Whether that be I mean, there's all sorts of allegations and things getting thrown around about who's actually in charge at Celtic at the moment, who's in charge of. I mean, Celtic are saying that Brendan Rodgers was in complete charge of the transfer window himself. I don't believe it. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks, because whatever manager comes in needs to have the backing of the board big still. But we need to bring in a manager also that believes in youth, that can bring on youth. Brendan Rodgers, and I'm going to say Ange Postecoglou, cost us big time with youth development at Celtic. I'm going to say that those two managers alone set Celtic back around about 5-6 years when it comes to youth development. We need a manager, and it's a shame because, like I said, with Brendan Rodgers first time around, he was the one that wanted to put in a lot of things in place for youth development so that there would be a pathway, and then it kind of disappeared under Lennon, and under Ange it disappeared completely. I want to get someone in at Celtic that believes in bringing on youth. McKenna ticks all the boxes, doesn't he? McKenna, after his stint in the youth system at Spurs, the youth system at Man United, kind of ticks all the boxes for what Celtic want as a manager. But they also have to have the ability to identify the need for more experienced players. And I don't mean bringing in a 38-year-old goalkeeper. That's not what I mean by experienced. What I mean is midfield general. You know, someone that's between 28 and 31 that can boss the midfield for us, because we don't have that at Celtic. Martin O'Neill knows that we don't have that at Celtic, so I want Klopp. Ten Hag would be a great shout. Could we afford his wages? The next manager will need good money for the transfer window. Well, we've got the money in the bank, but our Celtic, I mean, it could be the case that Celtic could go out and splash serious cash in the next window. But then again, the January window is always difficult because trying to identify. But then again, maybe it was just Brendan Rodgers. Maybe Brendan Rodgers didn't have the calling power anymore. Should Celtic go for a manager that does have calling power? I mean, Martin O'Neill definitely had that at his time at Celtic. Do we need to bring in a Jurgen? It's not going to happen, is it? We won't get Clark or Gunn, says Chris. I hope you're good tonight, mate. I'll go with Martin O'Neill. Make way for a young manager. He's making a statement there. I mean, that's the way that I think that it will happen. Martin O'Neill has said. I mean, Martin O'Neill would have spoke to Dermot and said, "Look, what is the plan?" Martin O'Neill's just not going to pick up the phone to Dermot and go, and Dermot's going to say to him, "Look, do you want to come in?" And Brendan's fucked off. I mean, it would be that blunt a conversation. Brendan's fucked off. Do you want to come back and help us until we get a manager in full time? Short term basis. As soon as we can get it done, we'll get someone in. What's the plan? Martin would have said. Because really, I'm at an age where I don't want to be hanging around till next fucking May in Celtic. I've got a cushy little life right now. 73-year-old enjoying his retirement, doing a little TV gig now and again, going to Europe games, going to World Cup games, etc. Loving life, being able to slag off managers, being able to slag off players with no repercussion, as Martin O'Neill's own words. You know, it's easy being a pundit. You just get to slag everyone off, and there's no comeback on you. Now that he's in the dugout again, he will have asked Dermot Desmond what the plan is, and you know, wouldn't be surprised if he said, "Look, what type of manager are you going to go for?" Maybe he didn't. Maybe he just went, "Yeah, I'll take the job." You know, you've got 10 minutes to think about it, because if not, I've got to pick the phone up to someone else, and I've got to get someone in today to get up here tomorrow. I can't fuck about with this. I think McKenna would be a good fit. He'd probably want to bring his own men in, possibly try and get in duff with them. You think so? If the board rumours are true, we need to hold horses signing the permanent manager and wait for the dust to settle. Not really, because it's always been Dermot that's finalised. If you think back to Ange, and when the board finally turned around to Dermot and said, look, we've lost out on a certain manager that we've been chasing for months. He's decided not to come to Celtic. And Dermot went, right, who's give me Ange's number. And then he phones Ange's agent. Ange's agent says, Dermot Desmond's going to phone you in half an hour. It's like, what? Yeah, the Celtic majority shareholder's going to phone you in half an hour. He then phones Ange, has a conversation with him, says that it's somebody that they've been looking at for a while. Would you like the job? I want your answer now. No thinking about it, no going away thinking about it. I need your answer right now. And he said yes. And then after the conversation, he said, right, who do you want to bring? We all know the story. But Ange Postecoglou went, no one. I'll bring myself. I'll just bring myself. That's all I need. I'll use the backroom staff that's at Celtic. That's how quick the Dermot acts and wants people to make decisions. That's a good businessman that does that, by the way. And I'm not going to get into the whole slagging Dermot Desmond thing tonight, because I think I've seen enough of that today. When you look at the speed that he can get things done, I think that he would have, if he has decided that McKenna is the man that he wants, I think that if it's going to cost us $4 million to get him away from his current club, he'll be like that. Pay it. Pay the $4 million. Do you know, if it costs us $4 million to get him in, and we get him in on a 3-year deal, because that's what we'll get. I think that any manager coming in will get a minimum of a 3-year deal. If they want to prove to the person that they really want him, they'll make that kind of offer, and then they'll give him. They might not get promises with cash to spend, but they'll be asked about budgets, and they'll be asking about players. They'll be asking all sorts of questions, and then we'll wait and see what happens. So yeah, I'm not sure the board's capable of making a good appointment. I think it's not the board at this point now. I think when we see the fact that there was no board members around today, and like I say, we go back to when Neil Lennon was brought back, Lawwell was there. But anyway, I don't want to talk about them. I just want to talk about the future of Celtic, because it's actually an exciting time. Jurgen Klopp would be orgasmic. Do you think so? Money talks. It does talk. And if a club like Celtic are calling you and they're offering £3+ million to come and take us to the next level, get us back winning on a weekly basis, get us back to pushing to win the league, to try and get into the Champions League. And another manager may say, I want assurances that we'll get in players quick again. Do you know, like what Ange did? We've got in the players, start to get the players in really early, not waiting to the end of the transfer window. I mean, I think that Brendan Rodgers has got a lot to answer for over the last few transfer windows as well. I'm not putting this all on the board. The board have got a lot to do with it. But if there's any truth in the statement that Dermot Desmond put out, even if there's 1% truth in the statement that Dermot Desmond put out, I think that we need to have a rethink. And then when I've reposted it on my Twitter, but I'll try and post it, the video that the Leicester fan site put out this afternoon, honestly, it could be word for word talking about the lack of quality, talking about the last 2 or 3 windows and the lack of quality. We had a good couple of seasons. We've not been able to bring in the quality. And you're sitting thinking, this guy's fucking been sitting saying all this about Celtic. Talking about quality, talking about transfer windows. And you're waiting, wait a minute here. History doesn't repeat itself that fucking, But anyway, we move on because Brendan Rodgers is in the past. Why is everyone so desperate for a top name? Why just can't get the right man? Yeah, think about it. Wait for Charlie Mulgrew to get the job. Recruiting hamstring, don't rush AJ back. Yep, I think so. Lennon can bolt. Yeah, I don't think there's many people would want Neil Lennon back. Danny Cassie's in the house. What about a Spanish manager? No, because the style of football in Scotland is just fucking mental. Come on, no Spanish manager worth his salt's going to come and manage in Scotland. Not with the style of football that's played. Not with the low block consistently. Not with the crazy tackles that's in Scottish football. I mean, there's some cracking young Spanish managers out there, but they're not going to leave Spain to go and manage in Scotland. Not a chance. Not a chance. Hence the reason that Kieran McKenna, a Northern Irishman, kind of fits the bill for everything that Celtic talk about. But anyway, we move on. We digress, as they say. Right, there's 255 votes on that. I'm going to finish up the poll in the next 5 minutes or so. McKenna is on 38%, Kudson's on 46%, Robbie Keane's on 9%, and the German, who's been linked with Celtic, is on 7%, right? Because a lot of people don't know about him and what he's done over the last couple of years as a manager. I'm just waiting this one more vote and then we'll end this poll. Just reading some of the comments. Announced Monday. Kieran McKenna announced Monday. I don't think that he would be at the game on Sunday. And I can't see that happening. I don't think Celtic would make it that obvious. There's one thing for sure. The rumour mill when it comes to Celtic and the Celtic manager is going absolutely bonkers. Rumours are all over the place. Gareth says he'd go for Kudson. The good thing, Sean Maloney said he's not ready. I think that was very honest by Sean Maloney today when asked at the press conference. Being honest that he doesn't want the Celtic manager's job. He doesn't want to be part of the backroom staff. He wants to go back to his position, which is pathway manager, which is it's a long-term job, isn't it? It's a long-term job with a little bit of job security about it. I mean, you're going to have to fuck things up completely to get the sack for pathway manager. Listen, if John Kennedy can be at Celtic for 27 years, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. We need the manager to bring the Huns on. The Huns on, the Huns down. But anyway, right, that is me done and dusted for this evening. Never even really spoke about the game tomorrow night. There's no use, is there? Because I think it's going to be a case of there is the fan demonstration that is, do you need to be Irish to get the job? No, you don't. But we do certainly have a leaning to Irish managers that have been quite successful over the last 20 years. They have been quite successful over the last 20 years. But is it time for change? Well, that's something that we'll need to wait and see. I'm for McKenna, Tommy Bloom, so both Glasgow clubs seen Javelin run. Henson, Verley and Hearts. The rumours of John Kennedy being sacked are true. I want to know why and what's happened. I have no idea. I don't really care. I'm just glad he's gone. It's about time he was sacked. Anyway, on that note, I shall see you in the morning. Thankfully, there'll be no late messages. Get on live tonight. It's been a mental busy day. On that note, have a fantastic evening, Celtic fans, wherever you are, all around the world. And my throat's done in now.